Before everything fell apart, Lena had a life she loved. She wasn't famous, rich, or even particularly lucky, but she was content. At 28, she had finally carved out her own little world in the coastal town of Eastridge, where salt breezes danced through narrow streets and the sound of car engines often blended with seagull cries. She worked as a mechanic at a small, family-run garage. Grease under her nails didn't bother her, it reminded her of her childhood, of afternoons spent passing tools to her father, her tiny hands clutching wrenches and sockets like treasure. Back then, the scent of motor oil was the smell of safety, of belonging. Now, it was survival. Lena had built her reputation slowly. She was known in town as the Gear Whisperer, an affectionate nickname from grateful customers whose cars had been brought back from the brink by her skill and precision. She wasn't flashy, but she was real. The garage was her sanctuary, and the sound of a purring engine her symphony. Then came Callan. He'd strolled into her garage one rainy afternoon, all easy charm and warm eyes. His car needed a quick fix, a radiator replacement, but he stuck around far longer than necessary. At first, she thought it was harmless flirting. Then it became coffee breaks, shared sandwiches, long conversations after closing. She resisted at first. She didn't do romance. Not since the last heartbreak, not since her mother's voice had warned her that women like her, tough, honest, plain-spoken, were always left behind. But Callan was different. Or so she thought. Within months, Lena let herself fall into him, fast, hard, and deeply. He spoke about futures with her, whispered dreams of building a life together, of maybe moving to the country one day and raising kids surrounded by sunlight and peace. It sounded so far from her world, so impossibly perfect, that she let herself believe it. Believe him. Then came the morning everything changed. The sun had barely risen, casting a gentle orange glow over the kitchen table where Lena sat, her fingers wrapped tightly around a warm mug of tea. Her heart was thundering. The test had shown 2 pink lines the night before. Not 1. 2. She was pregnant, with twins. She had barely slept, alternating between fear and wonder, already imagining the tiny feet that would someday stomp through her apartment. She'd practiced what she'd say at least a dozen times, but now, sitting across from Callan in their favorite diner, her voice shook. "I need to tell you something." He leaned in, eyes soft. "What's on your mind?" "I'm pregnant," she said, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "With twins." Time seemed to pause. Callan's smile froze, then faded. His hand slowly retracted from hers. "Twins?" She nodded, breath caught in her chest. I need to think," he muttered, standing abruptly. "Wait, Callan." I need time," he repeated, already backing away. And just like that, he was gone. He left his jacket behind. He left her behind. Lena sat in the booth for almost an hour, staring blankly at the sugar packets on the table. The waitress brought her a fresh tea she never touched. Her hands trembled too much to hold the cup. That night, she tried calling him. Once. Twice. 10 times. Nothing. By morning, she was outside his apartment. She needed answers. But it wasn't Callan who opened the door, it was a woman with sleek hair and a sleepy expression. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. "I'm looking for Callan," Lena said, her voice barely more than a whisper. I'm his girlfriend." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Fiancé," she corrected coolly, lifting her hand to show a diamond ring that caught the light cruelly. "You must be mistaken." Lena took a step back as her world cracked apart. She didn't remember how she got home. She remembered the sound of her breath, short and sharp, the way her body shook as if trying to collapse under the weight of it all. She spent the night curled up on the bathroom floor, hugging a pillow, crying until her throat burned. Her phone buzzed once. It was a text from Mia, her best friend since childhood. "You okay? I had a dream about you." Something felt wrong. Lena didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because the next morning, Mia showed up on her doorstep with grocery bags, warm soup, and arms wide enough to hold all of Lena's broken pieces. "You're not doing this alone," Mia said, pulling her into a hug. "We're going to figure it out. Together." Over the next few weeks, Mia became everything: nurse, counselor, roommate, and motivator. She cooked when Lena couldn't. She reminded her to eat. She stayed the night during the worst breakdowns and scolded her gently whenever she sank too deeply into despair. One afternoon, she walked into the garage with a spark in her eyes. "Remember Nora?" Lena frowned. "That woman who runs the high-end auto center across town? She's hiring," Mia said, holding out a printed job listing. "And I already called in a favor." Lena stared at the paper. "I'm pregnant, Mia. With twins." "So?" Mia challenged. "You're also brilliant. And this job could give you the security you need. I don't know if I'm ready." "You weren't ready to be betrayed either. But you're still standing." Lena looked at her best friend and saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't just surviving. She was rebuilding. On the morning of her interview, Lena wore her cleanest shirt and tied her hair back tight. She practiced her pitch in the mirror, her hand gently resting over her growing belly. "This is for them," she whispered. The auto center was sleek and efficient, a far cry from her humble garage. Nora, the owner, was tall and commanding, with eyes that missed nothing. She listened quietly as Lena explained her experience, her passion, and her pregnancy. Nora didn't flinch. "You start tomorrow," she said simply. Lena blinked. "Wait. Really? I don't care if you're carrying triplets," Nora said with a half-smile. "If your hands can fix what others can't, you belong here." That night, Lena sat on her porch under a sky full of stars. Callan had vanished. But she was still here. Still fighting. Still dreaming. And she wasn't doing it alone. Not anymore. The next morning, Lena arrived at Steelworks Auto Solutions, her new workplace, with her shoulders squared and her nerves bundled tight under a layer of determination. She was 28, visibly pregnant, and walking into one of the most competitive mechanic shops in Eastridge. She had something to prove. Nora, the owner, greeted her with a short nod as she handed over a set of coveralls. "You'll start on Bay 4. The alternator on that 12-volt RO is fried." Lena's fingers brushed the thick cotton uniform. This was real now. Not pity. Not charity. A real job. A second chance. She changed quickly in the back room, smoothed down her shirt over her growing belly, and took a deep breath. Bay 4 was already waiting. As she slid under the car, wrench in hand, something clicked inside her. It wasn't just about income or pride. It was about reclaiming the pieces of herself that Callan's betrayal tried to steal. Every bolt she twisted, every smudge of grease on her cheek, it all felt like armor being reforged. But not everyone welcomed her presence. By lunch, the whispers started. "Did you hear she's pregnant? And she's working on suspension systems? She's not gonna last a month. She's just here because Nora likes to make statements." Lena pretended not to hear, but every murmur sank into her skin. She kept her head down, eating her sandwich alone in the break room while scrolling through old pictures of her and Mia fixing up bikes as kids. "You're not here for them," she reminded herself. "You're here for them." She pressed her hand against her belly. The twins were her compass now. The days turned into weeks. And Lena worked. Hard. She replaced timing belts with steady fingers. Diagnosed electrical issues that had stumped other techs. Hauled tires heavier than her pregnant body wanted to manage. Some nights she came home with her feet swollen and her back aching so badly she could barely stand upright. But she never once asked for help. And slowly, something changed. The whispers faded. A quiet nod from a coworker. A shared coffee from the guy in Bay 2. A compliment muttered after she finished an engine rebuild 45 minutes faster than expected. Respect was being earned, inch by inch, lug nut by lug nut. One Friday evening, Lena stayed late, working on a complex fuel injection system. The sky outside had darkened, and the garage was nearly empty when she finally wiped her hands on a rag and prepared to leave. That's when she saw him. A man, crumpled near the side of the road just outside the shop. Her heart jumped. She ran out instinctively. Hey, can you hear me? His clothes were torn, his lips split, and blood ran down the side of his face. He opened his eyes for just a second, storm gray and filled with confusion. She didn't hesitate. Lena helped him to his feet, draping his weight over her shoulder, and guided him to her old truck parked out front. It took all her strength to lift him into the passenger seat. Her baby bump pressed awkwardly against the steering wheel, but she didn't care. She drove straight to Eastridge Medical, heart pounding like a piston engine. The nurses came out with a stretcher and wheeled him away. Lena watched from the glass doors, her arms still trembling. She didn't even know his name. Just that he needed help, and that once, not long ago, she'd needed someone too. She waited in the hospital lobby, pacing as the adrenaline faded and left exhaustion in its place. An hour passed. Then a nurse with kind eyes and a clipboard appeared. He's stable. He's under observation now, but he wouldn't be here if not for you. Lena exhaled slowly, rubbing her belly as if to calm herself, and the twins. She didn't expect anything from the man. She just wanted to know he'd live. The next morning, Lena arrived late to work for the first time since starting at Steelworks. Her face was pale, her hair tied back in a rush. Nora was waiting. "You're late," the boss said, arms folded. "I know. I'm sorry. I found an injured man last night on the roadside. Took him to the hospital. I didn't plan it." "You didn't call?" Lena winced. "I wasn't thinking about work. He was bleeding." Nora didn't respond right away. Her expression didn't soften either. "I'm docking yesterday's pay," she said finally. "Not because I don't believe you did the right thing. But because we're a business, and you know how I run this place." Lena nodded. "I understand." It still stung. But Nora's rules were fair. And Lena had come too far to let this knock her down. That night, she sat on her worn sofa, sipping tea and watching the rain beat on her window. Her muscles ached. The couch felt cold. But her heart held something new. Purpose. Until a knock echoed at her front door. She opened it slowly. An older man in a sharp suit stood there, his eyes red-rimmed, a folded envelope in his hand. "Are you Lena?" he asked. "Yes. I'm Bernard," he said. "My son. The man you helped last night. His name is Elias. You saved him." Lena blinked. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Bernard said softly. "Most people wouldn't have stopped. Not in this city. Especially not someone in your condition." He handed her the envelope. Lena hesitated. "I'm not taking money." "It's not money," he said. "Open it later, when you're ready. But there's something you need to know, he wasn't just beaten. He was taken. Drugged. We think someone tried to make him disappear." Lena's breath caught. "Why?" she whispered. Bernard's jaw clenched. "We don't know yet. But my son's life was in danger. And you gave him another chance." He took a deep breath, eyes softening. "Please, stay in touch. You may have changed more than one life last night." That night, Lena opened the envelope. Inside was a simple note. "Thank you, Elias." And beneath it, a small business card, "Private Security Consultant. Elias Wren." She ran her fingers over the letters. Something told her this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lena returned to the hospital the following day, unable to shake the image of Elias, bruised, barely conscious, and alone. She didn't expect answers. She didn't even know if she'd be allowed to see him. But something deep inside her, intuition, or maybe the voice that had guided her through every twist of life, told her she wasn't done with this man's story. The nurse at the front desk looked up as Lena approached. "Visiting Elias Wren?" she asked, her tone neutral but watchful. Lena nodded. "I brought him in. I just want to see how he's doing." The nurse studied her for a moment, then motioned toward the east hallway. "Room 314. But there's something you should know. Lena paused. What? The nurse lowered her voice. Something's off. His chart shows unusually high levels of sedatives, enough to keep a person unconscious for days. But his injuries didn't justify that level of medication. We've filed an internal inquiry, but... She looked over her shoulder. This feels deliberate. A cold wave rushed through Lena's body. Someone didn't just want Elias hurt. They wanted him silenced. She thanked the nurse and hurried down the hallway. When she stepped into room 314, the quiet beep of machines greeted her. Elias lay on the bed, face still and pale, 4 lines running from his arm. But she noticed something, the faint twitch of his hand, a slow turn of his head toward the window. He was fighting his way back. She sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on the blanket near his. "You don't know me," she whispered. "But I'm not going to leave you like someone else left me." That night, Lena called Mia. "I think I stepped into something big," she said, sitting cross-legged on her bed, the twins in her belly turning like tiny whirlwinds. She told Mia everything, the hospital visit, the sedatives, the stranger's father and his ominous warning. Mia, always the skeptic, didn't hesitate. "You have to be careful. If someone's keeping him under, they won't like that you're sniffing around." "I'm not sniffing," Lena said. "I'm protecting." "Same thing," Mia muttered, but promised to help in any way she could. The next day, Lena met the nurse again, her name was Camille, and asked her point blank, "If someone was drugging Elias on purpose, how would we know?" Camille looked at her with quiet courage. "There's a paper trail. If sedatives were ordered through the hospital, it's all logged. But not everyone uses official channels. Can you check?" Camille hesitated. Then nodded. "Come back tonight. I'll try to get access." By nightfall, Lena stood nervously by the staff entrance of the hospital. Camille met her in scrubs, holding a clipboard and a flash drive. "I couldn't print the files, it would raise questions," she explained. "But this drive has the logs. His name was tagged with dosage orders 3 times higher than needed. And guess who authorized it?" She flipped the clipboard around to show a digital signature, El Kavanaugh. "Who's that?" Camille's face darkened. "He's the hospital's director of security. But that's not all. He's also the longtime business associate of one man, Roland Sloan. Elias Rand's former legal guardian." Lena's spine went stiff. "Former?" "Elias took steps last year to dissolve the guardianship his parents had set in place. Apparently Roland had control of his estate until he turned 30. But when Elias started asking questions, things turned hostile. Now this..." Lena breathed out slowly, her mind connecting dots she didn't even know existed until this moment. Someone wanted Elias unconscious long enough for legal documents to shift. Long enough to make him disappear without a fight. But they hadn't counted on her. She returned home shaken, but determined. That night, while the city slept, Lena did something she hadn't done in years. She researched old court records, property databases, articles tucked behind paywalls, and a few calls to people Mia knew in cybersecurity circles. By dawn, she had a rough picture. Roland Sloan was wealthy, well-connected, and had overseen Elias's trust fund since Elias was a teenager. But just 6 months ago, Elias had filed a claim to remove him from all financial authority, citing fraud and manipulation. The court had stalled it, pending evaluation. And now Elias was unconscious. Lena opened the envelope Bernard had given her again. Inside was something she hadn't noticed before, a folded slip of paper. An address. And a name, J. Mercer, private investigator. The next day, Lena called the number on the slip. "You know Bernard Wren?" the gruff voice on the other end asked. "Yes. He gave me your name. Said you might know about Elias." There was silence. Then, "Meet me tonight." No names. No trails. Later that evening, she met J. Mercer in a coffee shop 2 towns over. He was in his 60s, wore a battered leather coat, and had the eyes of someone who'd seen more than his share of darkness. "Elias hired me 4 months ago," he said. He was convinced Sloan was bleeding his accounts dry. He was right. I found shell companies, offshore transfers, falsified reports. He was ready to take it to court. What happened? 3 days before his court date, he vanished. Lena's heart dropped. They said he went traveling. Then the hospital reports claimed he was found with drug-related disorientation. Lies. All of it. He didn't have enemies, he had a predator. She handed him Camille's flash drive. This has more. Medical logs. Dosage orders. He took it silently. Then it's time to bring the fight to them. Back at the hospital, Elias stirred again. This time, his eyes opened. Lena was there, waiting. "Where am I?" he whispered, his voice raw. "You're safe," she said softly. "I'm Lena. I found you on the roadside. Someone's been keeping you sedated. But you're okay now." Elias blinked slowly, his brow furrowing as the memories returned. "Sloan," he rasped. "He did this. You don't have to explain yet. Rest. But when you're ready, we'll finish what you started." A flicker of gratitude passed through his eyes. And then something else. Trust. That night, as she helped him sit up and sip water, Lena realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. This was war. And she was right in the middle of it. Lena had never stepped foot inside a courtroom before. The polished floors, the echo of quiet whispers, the hum of anticipation, it all felt like a world away from the clang of wrenches and the scent of motor oil. But today, she wasn't just a mechanic. She was a witness, an advocate, and a woman determined to help a man reclaim what was stolen from him. Elias stood beside her at the courthouse entrance, no longer pale and fragile, but solid. Whole. His recovery had been steady, slow but determined. With each passing day, Lena had seen more of his true self emerge, his sharp mind, his fierce sense of justice, and the kind of gentle strength that didn't shout, it simply endured. "I can't believe we're really doing this," he murmured, adjusting the collar of his navy blazer. "You didn't come all this way to turn back now," Lena replied, her hand brushing against his lightly. "Besides, we've got truth on our side. Truth, and a mountain of evidence." The flash drive Nurse Camille had uncovered, the financial records Mercer the Pie had compiled, and Elias's own damning testimony were now in the hands of a determined district attorney. Their case was simple. Roland Sloan had abused his legal guardianship to siphon funds, then had Elias drugged and hidden to stop him from gaining control of his estate. And the hospital's director of security, L. Kavanaugh, had facilitated it. What they hadn't counted on was Lena. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Roland Sloan sat at the defense table, surrounded by lawyers. Impeccably dressed, as always. But Lena noticed something else, the way his fingers trembled slightly as he smoothed his tie. The way he glanced too often at the exit. He was nervous. Good. Elias was called first. He walked to the witness stand with quiet confidence, then raised his hand and swore to tell the truth. And he did. In slow, measured words, Elias described how his life had slowly become a cage. How after his parents died, Roland became the only voice in his life, the one who controlled his money, his movement, his future. How the manipulation had started small, restricted access to funds, concerned advice about who to trust, and grew into isolation. "He told me I couldn't handle things on my own," Elias said, eyes fixed on the judge. "That I'd destroy everything my parents left me. But when I started pushing back, I wasn't just threatened. I was silenced." The courtroom was quiet enough to hear the air vents humming. "He drugged me," Elias continued. "He paid off hospital staff. He used my own vulnerability as a weapon. And if not for Lena..." His voice caught slightly. "I wouldn't be standing here." Lena's heart clenched. Her turn came next. Standing before the court, she took a deep breath. "My name is Lena Hartley. I'm a mechanic in Eastridge. A few weeks ago, I found Elias unconscious on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was an accident. But what followed proved otherwise. She recounted everything, finding Elias, the hospital visit, the strange sedative levels, Nurse Camille's warning, the late-night rescue, the documents, the fear, and the fight. "I didn't know this man," she said, voice steady. "But I knew something was wrong. And when someone's in danger, you don't walk away. You don't wait for permission to care." There was a pause after she stepped down. Even the defense attorneys looked shaken. Then Camille testified, confirming the sedation logs and the unauthorized medication orders. Then Bernard Wren, Elias's father, stood and swore that he had tried for months to challenge Roland's control, but had been shut out, dismissed by the courts as an emotional parent. "I nearly lost my son," Bernard said, his voice heavy with rage. And this man stood there smiling the whole time. It was a damning lineup. The final piece came from Jay Mercer, the private investigator, who detailed the money trail. How hundreds of thousands had been funneled into offshore accounts. How Elias's name had been forged on legal documents filed during his sedation. Everything pointed to one man, Mercer finished. Roland Sloan. He didn't just exploit a system. He exploited a grieving child. When the prosecution rested, Sloan's defense tried to spin it, claimed Elias was mentally unstable, that Lena was an emotional bystander overreacting, that the sedatives were prescribed for extreme anxiety. But the documents didn't lie. The testimony was airtight. The judge deliberated for hours. Then he returned with the verdict. Roland Sloan is found guilty of financial fraud, medical conspiracy, and unlawful detainment of a legal heir. He is hereby sentenced to 12 years in prison, with all assets seized and returned to the rightful estate owner, Elias Wren. Gasps and murmurs filled the courtroom. But Lena only heard one thing. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. But Lena and Elias pushed through, hand in hand, saying nothing. Only when they reached the steps did Elias stop. He turned to Lena. "I never asked you. Why did you help me? You risked your job, your safety. You didn't even know me." Lena looked up at him. "Because someone once left me behind when I needed them most," she said softly. "And I swore I'd never let that happen to someone else." He smiled. And pulled her into a hug. The following week, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Elias moved into a modest apartment near Lena's. He wasn't interested in luxury anymore. "I've seen what money can do when it's in the wrong hands," he'd said. "Now I just want to live life on my terms." They spent quiet evenings together, organizing paperwork, going on walks, planning for a future that finally felt theirs. Lena's baby bump was growing fast. And every time Elias rested his hand on it, there was a tenderness in his touch that made her heart ache. One morning, while painting the spare room together, he turned to her and said, "I want to be there. For them. For you. I want to be a real part of this family, if you'll let me." Lena paused, brush in hand, paint on her cheek. "You already are." They didn't need grand gestures or proposals under fireworks. Just a quiet promise. Two broken people, finding peace in each other's strength. And for Lena, that was everything. Spring arrived in Eastridge like a gentle sigh, soft winds, blooming trees, and skies the color of warm denim. For Lena, it didn't just mark the changing of seasons, it marked the beginning of something she never dared dream of, peace. 3 months had passed since the courtroom doors closed behind Roland Sloan for the last time. In that time, Lena and Elias had quietly built a life together. It wasn't lavish or perfect, but it was honest, safe, and deeply rooted in gratitude, for survival, for justice, and for each other. Lena's belly had grown round and heavy, her walk a gentle waddle that made Elias laugh and rush to her side more often than necessary. "I'm not made of glass," she'd tell him, swatting his hand away playfully. "No, but you're carrying 2 people and running an empire," he'd reply, grinning as he massaged her tired feet at night. They'd decided early on that the babies wouldn't be born into chaos or secrecy. So they got married, not in a courthouse or ballroom, but in the backyard of Bernard's cottage, beneath a tangle of fairy lights and climbing roses. Mia was Lena's maid of honor. Nora showed up in a sharp suit and proud smile. And Elias's vows were so full of quiet emotion that even the toughest guests blinked away tears. "I promise to never leave you in the dark," he'd said, his hand over Lena's heart. "To be the kind of father I wish I had. And the kind of man who will always choose truth, no matter how hard it gets." Lena, glowing in a simple cream dress, whispered back, "I never believed in second chances, until you became mine." They kissed under an arch made of wrenches, roses, and fairy lights. It was perfect. A few weeks later, Lena gave birth to twin daughters. It was a stormy night, the kind that rattled windows and flooded the sidewalks, but inside the delivery room, the world was quiet. Focused. Sacred. Elias held her hand the entire time, never wavering. "You've got this," he whispered again and again, brushing her hair back from her damp forehead. "You're stronger than anyone I know." When the cries rang out, two tiny, fierce voices declaring their presence to the world, Lena sobbed with joy. They named the girls Ivy and Lyra. Ivy, for resilience. Lyra, for hope. Holding them for the first time, Lena felt something shift deep inside her. It wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the foundation of a brand new book. She had gone from betrayed and abandoned to mother and wife. From silence to song. Their home, a cozy two-bedroom just outside the city center, soon filled with baby coos, lullabies, and the sharp click of tiny nails on hardwood from the rescue dog Elias brought home one Sunday, a lanky mutt named Pistachio who instantly became the twins' loyal guardian. "I thought we already had our hands full," Lena had laughed. Elias shrugged. She looked like she needed a second chance too. And so their house became a haven. For everyone. But Lena didn't stop there. She returned, slowly, to the garage, with Nora's full blessing. Not to lift engines or crawl under trucks, but to teach. To lead. She launched a women's automotive training program called Iron Ivy, a branch of Steelworks that welcomed single mothers, survivors, and young girls eager to learn not just about mechanics, but self-worth. Mia handled the business side. Elias volunteered as a mentor. Nora opened 3 more branches within the year. It was more than a job. It was a movement. Then, one afternoon, as Lena was helping a teenage girl learn to change a tire, a familiar voice stopped her cold. She turned slowly. Callan. He stood just inside the garage doors, looking thinner, older, and nothing like the man who had once walked away from her in a cafe. "I heard." He started, swallowing hard. "Ivy and Lyra. They're mine, aren't they?" Lena wiped her hands on a rag, every fiber of her body tensing. "They're not yours," she said calmly. "Not anymore. I just want a chance. To explain. To be a part of their lives." "You had a chance," she said, walking toward the counter. "The moment I told you I was pregnant, you ran." Callan opened his mouth but had no reply. Lena pulled out a sealed envelope and placed it on the counter between them. "What's this?" he asked. "Legal paperwork. Termination of parental rights. Emotional abandonment. You walked out, Callan. Now stay out." "You're serious," he said, voice cracking. "I'm free," she replied. "And you don't get to undo that." Elias emerged from the back office, expression unreadable but presence unmistakable. He said nothing, only moved to stand beside Lena. Callan looked at him, then at Lena. And for the first time, perhaps in his entire life, he understood what loss looked like. He turned and left without another word. Lena exhaled. Her knees felt weak, but not from fear. From release. "He was never a father," Elias said quietly. "But I am. Always will be." Lena leaned into him, her eyes shining. "I know." That night, as the twins slept and the world outside hushed to a whisper, Lena sat on the porch with Elias, wrapped in a blanket, Pistachio curled at their feet. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" she asked softly. Elias nodded. I think about the roadside. The cold. The silence. And how I thought no one would come. But someone did, she said. You did. They sat in silence, watching the stars blink to life one by one. You saved me, he said. Lena shook her head, eyes glistening. No. We saved each other. And in that moment, Lena knew, no matter what storms came next, no matter how unpredictable the road ahead might be, she wasn't driving alone anymore. She had a partner. A purpose. And a family born not from perfection, but from persistence. From fire. From love.